Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Hello.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our eighth webinar of the Gajan Initiative. We are rapidly approaching the end of the project, and today we have our last webinar. Let me just share my screen and we can start. Okay, you can see it? Yeah. Okay, so as you all know, today we have our last webinar with the theme of intergenerational practices and also a little bit regarding our pilot experience of the Gajan initiative. My name is Maria Gonçalves. I am a project manager in Aproximar, and on behalf of the partners of the consortium, we would like to welcome you everyone who's joining us here today. In terms of the agenda for today, sorry, let me just go back to the top of the PowerPoint. In terms of the agenda today, as you know, I'll start by doing a small introduction of the project Gajan, and then we have two speakers, one is me. I'll be just giving a little bit of a study case of the Portuguese experience regarding the pilot. And then we have our colleague Georgia Chaves, and she'll give you a different approach to intergenerational learning, explaining all about a different project that she is implementing. So I think it's very, very interesting, the approach that they have been doing, and just wait to learn a little bit more about it. So I will start by just giving you a brief introduction of the project, as you already are familiar with the Gajan initiative. But of course, just one quick reminder that we are recording the webinar. So if you wish, you can turn off your camera, as it will be made available later on the project website, but you can still be part of the discussion here today. So just stay with us for the whole duration of the webinar. With no further ado, I'll just give you a brief introduction to the project. And as you know, it is an Erasmus Plus initiative being co-founded by European Union. And our main objective is to offer an intergenerational learning approach to environmental education by using serious games in a digital format. So it's a little bit innovative way to do this approach. Ultimately, what we want to create is awareness. So we are not aiming to create experts in any kind of way, but we want to increase their awareness of their impact on climate change, how they can act, their roles as citizens, and how play and through play they can adapt and mitigate the climate change impacts that we are facing. And of course, we are speaking to each one of us as citizens, and the target group specifically for the Gajan project is adult educators, and how we can work with them and provide them this intergenerational learning approach so that they can use it with other adults and children. And specifically here for the Gajan project, we had to put a standard and use it. So we stated that we would work with children under 12 years old. So during our webinars, we have been exploring in more detail these topics and these themes, but if you have missed any of these, you can go back into our webinar recordings on our website, and you can learn a little bit more of the different topics that we have talked about regarding the games and how to make intergenerational learning approach more accessible to everyone. So in terms of the partnership, as we mentioned before, this is an Erasmus project. And of course, we're working in a consortium of 6 partners who are also some of you here today. We have been coordinated by Euromat, so our partner in Germany. And we have 2 partners in Portugal, so us, Aproximar, but also Virtual Campus. And we have been also working with KJAM from Turkey, AFG from France, and our partner is PCG from Poland. So as you can see from the duration of the project, we started in November 2022, and the project is about to end in just a few short days at the end of the month of October. So just 2 more days. So the project had the duration of 36 months, and we had time to begin, go into the field, have a sense of what is actually needed, what can be done, in what we're proposing in this initiative. So in the past few months, we had been finalizing just the last activities, such as the piloting, testing the digital serious game in the intergenerational sessions. And you can learn a little bit more about all of this in our website and be aware of everything that we did so far. But just in terms of what our priorities were, of course, we are working on an adult education project. So our main focus was related to see with this project were our environmental and fight against climate change. So you know that we all been working in the green transitions. So this is a topic nowadays, very big concern for all members of the EU. And it's, of course, it's a topic in which a lot of things have been done in terms of the role of older adults and children that they can have as active role in the society. But there are a few things that older adults and children can do to mitigate climate change, but also what types of professional training that we can offer to adults educators. So what we can use in a non-formal way, but more in the intergenerational learning approach, and also the gamification that we aimed to provide. Secondly, we were also working in a social project, so we are also aiming to create learning opportunities for everyone. And we also believe that's the power of different generations coming together. So we realize that are indeed a lack of opportunities, especially for older adults in these topics. So even though it has been changing in the past few years, we still see a lack of a little opportunities for lifelong learning for older adults, especially related to climate change fields. So we focus also a little bit on broadening those opportunities. And last but not least, of course, we have, and since side by side this green transition, we have the digital transformation. So we wanted to think about how we can address the digital transformation through the development of a digital readiness and progression. And so we developed, and using this digital game would combine the gamification of learning and that we wanted with universal reach through Europe and of course through the world because it's open source. Thus also contributing a little bit to the digital wave and capacitization for more people with these new approaches. In real terms of what these activities, what we did, the main results transformed are now most of them available for you to use and to learn a little bit more. So the first thing that we did was this methodological framework. Where we mapped out all the concepts, all the theories, all the literature review that already existed and that we could build on. So what type of games already existed, touching on these topics, and also like intergenerational approach, but also the climate change. And there weren't a lot of games reaching these two topics. And we also mapped out a little bit the framework that we organized through the co-creation sessions that we did in each country that allowed us to gather older adults and children, and they built different games together. And these were the baseline for the structure for the game that we developed. So, of course, the second result was the actual build of the game for environmental education and awareness. But we didn't imagine this game as a standalone tool. So we decided and identified that the game should be used as a tool, as a resource that people could use when we are working on climate awareness, on intergenerational activities, so as a resource. For that, we developed a training pack for facilitators of the game, of course, focusing on the game, on how to play it, but also on how to facilitate intergenerational activities, programs, etc. So each partner country trained their facilitators who implemented the pilot, tested the intergenerational activities, and using the game. Of course, lastly, we put everything together. We piloted the game in intergenerational sessions, and we have all the experiences detailed. We are still finalizing this final result, but you have here a handbook, a resource, a final resource that people can use to replicate what we did so far on the project. So based on this, and since today is our last webinar, what we propose for today is to just give you a little bit of an inside scoop on the pilot experience that we had. So I'll talk just briefly a little bit on our pilot experience here in Portugal, and then we'll give you a different approach, a different idea on how to use intergenerational practices with different target groups that Giorgio will share with you. So without further ado, for today, as I mentioned, I'll just start with our experience of the piloting in Portugal from our side, the Proximar. And since we have this process map that we developed, and here you can find the approach of environmental education and the main aims of the process that we have on the guide on how to implement this intergenerational approach to use the game that we developed. Of course, you can use it with a different tool, with a different game, just to implement this intergenerational approach. So what better way for me to tell you the story of our piloting than to follow along the different sections of the process map that we created. So the first thing that the process map tells us to do is, of course, disseminate our sessions and gather the two or three target groups that we need. For us and the Proximar on our side, what we actually did from the beginning of the project, it was that we worked together with one stakeholder very closely. So we co-created everything with them, which made it easier for us than to implement the pilot and have all the target groups at one place. Basically, this stakeholder that we reached out, they are a social rural center. So they do have all the three key target groups that we needed. Basically, they do have younger children as their extracurricular activities and their kindergarten. They also have older adults because even though it's in the different building, they do have older adults on the day center. And since we worked with them on training facilitators, these facilitators were then the ones who implemented the game and the sessions with everyone. So, of course, we needed to account for their needs, their timelines, their activities. And this was also things that we discussed and took into account in our meetings with the facilitators. And we were able to co-create with them the best approach for taking into account the Gajan methodology. So this is something that I would like to highlight. Is that this methodology that I will present a little bit more in detail now, this structure for the different sessions is very adaptable to the local needs and the preferences that you might face in your realities. So as you can see here, we have different sessions of our methodology. First of all, the first and second step, which is gather together, and that's why it has the same color. But the thing is that this is a piloting, so we needed to collect a little bit of data. So we would have this first session where we collected pre-test data just to assess their knowledge and their relationships regarding intergenerational learning. And we also proposed this first learning session with separate groups because of the main objective of these learning sessions is for the group to know each other. So we would have one session with the young participants and one session with the older participants to also deconstruct stereotypes before putting them all together, working for this towards the same goal. Then we had the 4 intergenerational sessions where the different participants were able to play together and learn about the environment together. And last but not least, the last session where we also collected the post-test results and data. Just for you to have an idea of this first learning session that I was mentioning. So we have on the methodology, you can see the different timelines for the learning session with the younger participants and also the timeline for the learning session with the older adults and the different activities that we did with them to deconstruct a little bit of the stereotypes towards the outgroup that they would meet. And of course, you also have here an example of the pre-test and also post-test that we use just to show you that we try to make it very simpler, very easy to fill in. Yeah, so that's in on this session and the methodology for all the sessions that we had. But of course, for those 4 intergenerational sessions, what did we do? As I mentioned before, the game was meant to be a tool as a resource to discuss the themes and the topics that we were actually wanting to work on with the different groups. So basically what we proposed for the intergenerational sessions is to start with an opening activity where we would present the theme that we wanted to engage people on, and then we would let them work on play the game, work on it together freely. And of course, by the end of the session, after like 45 minutes of playing the game, we would wrap up the session with a small closing activity, just a brief summary of key takeaways that they would have and explored that day. So in our case in Portugal, we had 14 older adults and 17 children involved in the piloting session. As I mentioned before, we worked on a partnership with a social parochial center, and they facilitated their space. So we brought the computers and all the devices that we needed. So as you can see on the images, we didn't have as many computers as participants. So what we did is that we divided them into different groups, and we rotated so it would be easier to manage also regarding the sound and the loud noises that would do in the classroom. So one thing that we would like to highlight was also the intentional thing that we did was to bring outside of their comfort zones all the participants. So the classrooms that we used were not the classrooms that younger children usually use, but was also outside of the building where older adults usually are. So this way we would assure equal circumstances for all participants, which is one of the key components of intergenerational learning. And as you can see also here on the images, we paired them together, one children and one older adult, or 2 children's and just one older adult, just because of depending on how many participants we had on that day. So the intergenerational part comes from the relationship that participants establish between them, but also from the exchanges that participants have within them. So you know that intergenerational learning needs to have exchanges both ways, and we were able to see that very clearly on our piloting sessions. As you can see here on the images, some older adults weren't able to use their mouse while playing the game so well because they weren't used to it, because they're used to touch screens and something like that. So they had some difficulties interacting with the game. But the younger participants, instead of taking away the mouse and playing by themselves, they would just put their hands on the older adults' hands and teach them how to use the mouse while playing the game. But also we have, and we saw, we're able to see exchanges in the other direction, where we had different occasions where children wouldn't know what one item was or how to different parts of the game would play out, and the older adults were able to explain to them, to teach them how to use more traditional methods regarding, for example, composting and different themes that we touched on the game. But we also had exchanges. For example, I remember the first session that I facilitated. I started by asking if they had ever planted a tree, and most of the participants, even older and younger participants, raised their hands. And it was very surprising in a nice way, of course, but most of them had already planted a tree. And very quickly, an older adult stood up and asked, "Okay, so I see most of you have already planted a tree, but do you know actually how to do it? What does it entail?" And almost no one said they know how to do it or how, because most of them had done it in an event or a school event or in the day center events. But they didn't know the particular specificities about regarding agriculture, sorry, the soil and the seeds and everything. So he explained it to everyone in a very engaging way. And it was a very nice way to start the theme, the topic that we wanted to explore that day. So even when we are not planning for this relationship to happen and these exchanges to happen, they do happen in a more spontaneous way, which is our goal here with the intergenerational learning, is for the relationship to flow. So just very quickly for me to end our side of our experience of the piloting, just regarding the results. Of course, we collected more qualitative data on face-to-face, asking participants how they felt. But regarding the more quantitative data that we collected on the pre-test and post-test, you can see that regarding the satisfaction for the results, we have higher scores regarding the satisfaction that the older adults had, like playing with younger players, which was our main goal. And as for the children, they had higher scores regarding having fun with doing tasks with older participants. So I think it's fair to say that the satisfaction and the direct qualitative data that we have, the feedback that we have from them, actually reached our goal that we had in a very positive way and with very positive results with the piloting experience. But of course, regarding the pre-test and the post-test, we don't see much difference between the two of them in the most of the statements. While analyzing a little bit in more details, we see that the pre-test actually is higher in some of them, but this we need to take into account a little bit in adjust to the post-test. We actually had more people answering the post-test because some people started the activities while we had already collected the pre-test and while we were already doing the activities. So we do have a lot more data on the post-test rather than the pre-test. Also, the post-test was not collected on the last day, was actually collected a few days after, few weeks maybe after, because it was not dependent on us, it was actually dependent on the facilitators who were in the field. So that is something that we also need to take into account. But nevertheless, I think the results are very, very positive regarding the relationship and the feedback that we had with all the participants. So from my side, this is what I wanted to share with you from our pilot experience in Portugal and the results that we reached, just in a way as to show you a little bit of a study case of what we gathered. So now I leave you with Georgia. Georgia is our consultant in the Proximar. She works in the education sector. She has worked on capacitation and developing projects with children and younger people, but she also is involved in training with adults and other professionals who worked in more vulnerable groups. So thank you, Georgia, for coming here today and for sharing with us your experience.
Yes, thank you for having me. Maria, and for organizing all things. I'm happy because I see some familiar names here from our partners and from our colleagues. So I hope it'll be good for you to learn more about what we do here at Prosmar, as Maria said, not only with children and young people, but also putting groups to interact with each other and learn from each other. In the education and community empowerment sector, we promote activities and competencies not only um, with children and young people, but also adults, older adults, with this particular initiative here that I will be talking to you more about in the next minutes. I see here colleagues from APG, which are also within the project with us. So feel free to add things if you wish. We can always learn from each other. I'll be talking about the Ties of Freedom initiative, which has as the uh, goal, like the intergenerational exchange, as a strategy to promote democratic values. Hi, partners. Nice to see you here. So this initiative started on March and it will go until February 2027. What can we say about it? Let's see. Focus. So it's part of the Serve fund, the Citizen Equality Values and Rights program for the EU, and it will focus on the transition from authoritarian and totalitarian rule to democracy. So we want to highlight the lessons that we have learned in the past, the not so distant past, so we won't repeat same mistakes, and we can learn from people who experience it firsthand and want to share these lessons and experiences with younger people. So we want basically to retain these lessons for the future and highlight how can we defend democracy, how can we defend the rule of law and fundamental rights. So it's a 24 months project which has this great partnership. The Ties of Freedom initiative is led by our colleagues from EACEA, which is located in Romania. Also comes with our colleagues from Baketic in Spain. Tremcena is also in Romania, so EACEA and Tremcena shared some activities in Romania, which is it's great. Aproximar is the partner here responsible for implementing activities in Portugal. We have Meridania in Italy, and our partners from AFG also in France. So it's, yeah, 6 organizations from 5 European countries, which of course increases our potential to learn from each other. So here, a little bit more about the goals, the objectives of this initiative. So what we are working to build. We are working to engage democracy advocates, which is this network, which are this group of people that are particularly sensitized to the topics, which are willing to invest their time by sharing their opinions and experiences with other people. So on the issues related to democracy, why is it important to defend democracy? Why is it important to not take it as granted? Uh, Promoting human rights, how can we promote human rights in the EU today? So we have this Democracy Advocates Network, which I'll be talking about in a few minutes. And of course, promote this intergenerational exchange of living a democratic life as a strategy to raise this awareness among children and young people and people who have not experienced firsthand the authoritarian regimes from the past, but can learn from people who have. So we want to put these groups to work together, to interact with each other, and to see from other points of views. So we also want to promote these participatory discussions, these conversations, debates among children and young people, but not only, also older adults, also educators, professors, families, other groups from society. So it will be very intergenerational approach to it. But also, it's important to share our message. So here we have a specific goal related to dissemination and how can we raise awareness of the topics. So here we want to influence not only relevant stakeholders, but also educators, people who work with children and young people on a daily basis. How can they continue to work with children and young people and sensitize them to these topics? So here, taking in a project approach, you have the work packages sometimes distributed among the objectives and also activities, but it's just a more visual way, I would say, to put things. Nice. So in practice, what we'll be doing, activities that we have already implemented and we'll also continue implementing. We'll have, by the end of the project, the storytelling workshops, which have been implemented in all partner countries. I'll be talking about them in a second. We'll also build this intergenerational board game, which will we want to involve a digital component to it, so we can we want to get the attention and interest from children and young people, and we think that the digital approach can help here for them to want to talk and to listen and to learn about the topic. So this intergenerational board game will be one of the resources created here, but also a short film, a short animation film, which is under development right now, so that children and young people can see in a more dynamic visual way some of the stories that older adults, people who have experienced the democratic transition in their countries, have shared with us. We also have the democratic talks. It's conversations with children and young people in a school context. So here we'll articulate a lot with schools and teachers. It's also already under development, this group of activities, and we want to put them into practice real soon. Then we have the circles of democracy, which are public debates, here including more educators, teachers, families, and also the general population will be more open events so we can talk about a lot of these topics. They're very important at the moment, I would say. We also have this exchange that is not only intergenerational, but also intercultural. So we have the study visits, we'll have the national ones and also the international ones. We'll have an international conference, which I'll again show in a minute. All of this, of course, cannot be closed in a box. So we want the world to know what we have been doing. So we count with a lot of dissemination events and activities and resources. Also here with the support of our partners from AFEG. So this intergenerational approach will not only involve children from 6 to 10 years old, as young people from 11 to 16, and also older adults, with particular focus on those who have actually lived and experienced the democratic transition in their countries. But not only, as I said, here we want to involve families, educators, the school board, people from the local community who have special interest in these topics and want to be present at the events, for example. So yeah, it's very wide, I would say, potential for participation. Up to now, what have we implemented so far? Here we have already promoted the storytelling workshops, which have involved pretty much people, older adults who have experienced the democratic transition in each of the partner countries. So the goal was to provide them the space, a comfortable and safe environment so that they could share their stories, their experiences. How was it before the democratic transition? How was surviving and going through all of these changes in their countries? So through some activities, we got to listen and then to collect their testimonies throughout August and September of this year. A total of 84 participants were involved in our partner countries, which is I think it's a good number. We got to collect and hear a lot of um, powerful stories, powerful testimonies who will be very important for the next phases of the initiative. Here in Portugal, we got to interact and be with 16 people in São Domingos de Rana, which is the neighborhood in which a person has one of our services working with children and young people. But here, our colleague Marta, who is in this picture with members of the Faceiras Neighborhood Residents Association, she was the one who went there and listened to their stories, and who got to talk with them and listen to stories and testimonials. And she has shared with us that she felt a lot of mixed feelings about all the stories that she got to because people were proud that they could manage to go through, but they also were sad. They want to share with young people what they went through and to provide a powerful yes, go fight for democracy message, but they also want to be quiet and yeah, so it's mixed feelings. I don't know if our colleagues from EACEA can also provide you the space if you want to share some of these stories here. But in Portugal was sensitive topics for us. Up to now, next thing that we did, all of us went next week to Bucharest. We had the first intercultural meeting. A total of 23 individuals from all 5 partner countries, including members of the Democracy Advocates Network, which is also under construction. The goal was also to provide space, a fun and dynamic and safe space for both younger people and older adults who have experienced, and we have participants who have actually experienced it in partner countries, to share their perspectives and ask questions and to reflect on the current context of each of our countries. Here is a picture of us in one of our activities, and we can also share more things that we did. We had some sessions providing the current situation, the current context of some of the partner countries. Here we have the Portuguese session. We did a brief presentation about what was the revolution in Portugal. And also we did a more musical moment to try to build a theme for the topics. Here you have our colleague Diogo, which presented the first part of the From Silence to Voice Democratic Change in Portugal. Our colleagues from FG also presented a little bit of their work in the current context of challenges related to migration, what the organization do to tackle all these challenges. We also have a representative for the Communism Museum in Romania. What's very, very interesting, although she's a younger person who had not experienced the democratic transition, but she brought a lot of stories from her parents, from her colleagues, friends, grandparents, all relatives. And I think it was a very interesting forum to hear and learn about Romania. we also had this dynamic activity of design and participation together. And the question was kind of what would participation, the perfect way of participating would be like for you? And we had to, in 15 minutes, build an initiative from scratch, including all elements of the perfect participation forum, or yeah, how it would look like in your country, in your group, this um, this democratic participation. And also have the Harmony for Democracy here. We put all our colleagues to build a theme, a common song, which included what democracy meant for them. They had to include some words, and I think it looked great by the end. So just to say that we had a lot of different things going on in 2 days, and I think it was a great experience. So we could prepare for the next steps, which are those. So here again, in a more project uh, language type of thing, we will continue to build the Democracy Advocates Network. By the end, we want to have around 60 people actively involved in meeting, not only online, but also in this second intercultural session that will happen in Spain next year. They will go again and meet and share what are the current challenges in their countries, what can we do as a network, and then bring back with some ideas. They will have also 2 online consultations. So here in Portugal, we have 10 participants, which can be educators, teachers, students, people who are interested in talking about these topics. So yeah, by next year, they'll meet again. As I mentioned, we are also building the short animation film, who will present some of the testimonials in a more visual and here I'll put almost light way some of their testimonials that we collected to children and young people, and will also be presented by the beginning of each of the next activities. Will be a common thing for all of the upcoming activities. These stories will also be drawn by children and young people in the booklet. So the stories from older citizens, older adults that experience the transition in their countries will be drawing, put in a more uh, physical resource, for example, which will also be presented in the beginning of all of the upcoming activities. We have the democratic talks, which will start very soon in collaboration with schools. We'll bring around 10 topics. How can we promote the EU fundamental rights? What are the main challenges that we are facing today related to the promotion of democracy, which will bring to children and young people? By May next year, we'll also host the Mobility for Young People here in Portugal. Partners from all of the 4 countries will be here with us. I think will be a great moment so they can share their experiences, not only about the project, but also uh, as advocates for democracy in their contexts. And children will participate in national study visits in organizations that are related to democracy, for example, parliaments or national assemblies. There will be, they'll have the chance to meet some of the institutions in their countries. Then, what will we do? So we have this intergenerational gaming box, which will include activities for children and older adults, and also activities for young people and older adults, so they can play again, play and interact and exchange ideas between different groups related to the topics that were previously implemented in the democratic talks. We will continue to talk about all of these 10 main issues among these groups, which will lead us to the intergenerational events. So this game will be available. So these groups have this excuse, this strategy to come together and talk about these topics. Educators, families, teachers will also be invited to participate and to debate in the implementation of the circles of democracy in a later phase of the initiative. We also have, by the same time that we have the mobility for young people here in Portugal, we also have some of the national participants from the local community, the Portuguese community in the international conference here will be able to listen to their experiences. We also include a more musical moment. Here we bring music as a strategy to talk about these themes because it was also a form of how people dealt with difficult times. So we include music in some of the moments here for the project. We also have national multiplier events by the end, and also a final reflection in the national webinars. So we can spread the word and reach more people regarding these topics. Here we invite you to follow our social media accounts for the Ties of Freedom project. Here we have not only the website, but also LinkedIn account, Facebook and Instagram account. I'll leave here the pages for a minute. So you can be updated and see how you can participate or how can you, I don't know, learn more about how the transition happened in our partner countries. So here you have good source of information regarding the Ties of Freedom project. I'll come back to this slide in a second just to say thank you. And yeah, if you have questions, just reach out to us. We'll be here. That's it from my side, Maria.
Thank you so much, Giorgio, for sharing your experience and for sharing a different approach on how to implement intergenerational activities in a different topic, in a different way, but still reaching out for that relationship that different generations can bond and can actually share their knowledge from their different perspectives and what they both can bring to the table in a very important theme that is, in this case, the democracy and the future of the different nations involved in Europe. So thank you so much for sharing your experience. I would like to open up a little bit for the rest of the participants if you want to ask your questions, if you have any doubts, anything that you would like to ask. Okay. Okay, I don't see also any questions here on the chat, but of course we are, like Georgia said, you have also the different social networks for both of the projects. You can always reach out, ask your questions. We would like also to mention that regarding the Gajan initiative, you can go back, watch all the different webinars touching on the different subjects. As you know, the Gajan initiative has 3 different realms, completely different, that we try to bring together: intergenerational learning, the climate change, the digital games. So it's 3 different roles that we merge together here in this project. The different webinars touch a little bit on the different parts of the project with different experts. So you can always go back, watch the recordings, ask your questions, leave your comments. And you also have all the resources available on the website to try and use for your own. Last but not least, I would like to ask all of you to fill in the feedback survey for our last webinar. I'll also try and put on the chat. Okay, and yeah, I'll also add it on the chat. So if you prefer to use a direct link to the feedback survey, we have it here on the chat. And if no one has any other questions or suggestions, I would just like to thank all of you for being present here today, for participating on the webinars, on this project, and thank you very, very much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you to the both of you.
Thank you.
Bye.